G'day, friends and fans. Welcome to a conversation with, I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the book, The Boyhood of Cade, book one of the Empire of Elves. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you that this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience, so please check out the links below. Not only are my links down there, but Darryl's as well. And I'd like to reintroduce Darryl. He's been on the channel before. I've done an excellent interview with him. That'll be linked after the show. But Darryl, tell us about your book again, and we'll go from
Before
there.
I do, greetings from the Thousand Realms of Telesur. All right, so my book is a retelling of, or a reincarnation of King Arthur. It's nowadays, not way back then. His name is now Jason, and every time the universe needs a Pendragon, they create one. So he is the latest creation of the Pendragon. He has to say there's three universes, not just three worlds, but three universes connected by a bridge. And the reason he's called forth is to save the universes, but he doesn't know what he's got to do. Merlin is there, only he's called Merlin. He hired a woman to be the hero's mom because he essentially left the mom and dad to he let them sacrifice themselves so he could get the baby because he was the chosen one. So now the kid has no parents. So he had to hire a woman who is a warrior to be his mom, and she does actually become his mom. She thinks of him as her child. He also has two best friends, David and Red, who come with him without permission. And Merlin gets pissed off, but they come with him without permission, but they actually have skills that are really, really needed. So David essentially is the epitome of magic. He can do any magic he wants without thinking about it. Red is the epitome of physical. He can move really, really, really fast, and he's really good with his weapons. But Jason, and here's the weird part, and this may be a spoiler, but Jason can be anything he wants. He can become you. He can become me. He can become Red. He does become an earth elemental and a fire elemental in the book. Now, he doesn't know how to do it. He just does it on accident so far. In the first book, they're all kind of learning their skills, but they don't know them yet. And there are three gigantic armies attacking Camelot, and they have to defend against all three in about a day and a half.
That's quite a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. I also have a book on the histories of how it all came about.
Yeah.
My version of the Silmarillion.
Everybody needs one.
Yes.
I call it everybody needs one. I did a thing on world building, faction building, and factions / city state. I just call them all factions.
And
but
if
when you're building a world,
you don't have a history to your world, it's not a real world.
Yeah, no, even if it's scant, it's got to exist.
Yes.
To make it a real world.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, that's why they write real world, because it's so easy. They don't have to do the work. They don't have to do the lifting.
I write fantasy and I create the world, but honestly, and I don't know if I remember telling you this before, but these worlds popped into my head. I didn't actually, in my opinion, I didn't actually create them. I was asleep one night and woke up and they were all in my head.
That's one of the things I want to talk about, because You know what happens to me? I dream full color movies with all
Yeah,
the
I do
action,
too.
with all the dialogue. Yeah, and a
But
lot of writers,
since okay, so
yeah, a lot of
since
writers
May
have got to tap into it. Yeah,
since May of 2022, my dreams have changed and have become more mundane because okay, here's a story about me, not the book, if you're okay with that.
yeah. Go
May of
ahead.
22, I hit my head again, and this is about the 30th time I've had a concussion. I've had a lot of them. But I went into a coma for 3 days. And when I woke up as a poet, but my dreams were not as extravagant as they were. Now I dream about sitting across from somebody I know talking to them about bullshit. I don't get the dreams anymore.
I don't get them all the time, so if they don't come, they don't come. But when they come, it's just so hard to remember and write it all down that you
Well,
eventually end up writing a book. You know,
when they come to me,
oh,
I have to get up and write. And I accidentally made a book about a month and a half ago,
yeah.
and you probably saw it on Twitter when I was talking about Bomo. He was a guy that he fought a dragon to save his girlfriend and his city, and he got cursed by the dragon, turned into a troll. So
Cursed into a troll, right?
he can still think like a human, but can't speak like a human. And everybody's afraid of him. And it was a story, and I did it on Twitter on accident. I was just telling stories. And he basically becomes the hero of the forest, saves the town that's near the forest, makes sure that nobody destroys the animals in this forest, and then he has to fight another dragon and he dies. But instead of death coming to him, the woman he loved comes to him. And then the mother goddess gives them, she makes them gods of the forest. So instead of just being a horrific story, he ends up being what he wanted to be anyway. And I was just telling little stories on Twitter, and that kind of showed up. I'm weird that way.
I got to be honest, because I have so many people following, and these days, if you don't, unless you're really famous, you have to follow back. So my Twitter feed is just constantly full. So
I know.
I'll miss a lot of people. I'll
I
miss a
don't
lot
have
of
the Twitter feed you do, but mine is even so hard I can't follow.
yeah. Most of the friends I can't follow anymore because I don't get them all. And you got to go. You got to remember to go back, and
Well, these were
you
just
got too many. You got
these were
so
just little
many.
posts, but
Mm,
it showed up, and I went, okay, now I got to write this thing.
yeah,
It's one of those. That's where most of my books show up. Is I think about something. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, that'd be cool. Oh, that. Oh, now I got to write it.
yeah. But these days, I'm getting so much spam that I can actually now understand the guy who invented. I mean, swords been around forever, but then in the 17th century, the perfect sword was invented. I think it was originally called. It was the dueling saber. Nice, just basically one big giant knitting needle with a point. And I can understand it because knock, knock, knock on the door. You know, all the door knockers, all the spam. I can understand it. He got up one day and just poked somebody with his wife's knitting needle and said that wasn't good enough, and went to the workshop and made it and made a proper.
Now, here's one thing that I will give the Irish this. The Irish were fighting the Romans, and the Romans were using gladiuses.
Yeah,
So the Irish went, "Hey, steal those." And they stole them and said, "Let's
yes,
make them. Then let's make them better." And they that's where the Celtic short sword came from. It was a
yeah.
gladius that they made better.
They trimmed because the gladius was stamped out. and they trimmed and honed the gladius.
Yeah, and then they widened out the end a little bit
Yeah.
to where it kind of had that roundish shape.
Well, that's because it
I
kept
did a
getting
lot of
caught.
studies on weapons.
Yeah, it kept getting caught in the shoulder bone and trying to lever it out, so they actually made it so that it could roll off the bone.
Here's a good one for you. The claymore
That was
was
originally made to cut people's heads off with one stroke.
actually originally meant to cut horses' legs off and people's heads. But then they
Yeah.
then they developed it a little more. So
Yeah.
if you look at it, it's about 65 inches long at most. Anywhere from 52 to 65.
Yeah.
The handles come out like this, and that is a hammer. The fact that that blunt side on the blade right at the tip, that means you can use it as a spear.
Yes.
How
It's
long
made
it
by
was
Hell. Yeah.
was designed because English used kite shields, and they could put the sword in the ground and push them back.
Yes.
This was the Swiss Army knife of swords.
Yeah. I didn't know about I knew it was made to cut off heads. I didn't know about the
It was
about the
originally
horse's
designed for cutting the horses down because that was the big threat.
Yeah, I knew that the Scottish that when they were they needed to be able to hold their sword,
Yeah,
and push back because they were fighting on narrow ledges because they couldn't engage the English in the open fields, so they'd harass them on the mountains.
with Scottish tactics, here's a good one for you. There's a story in the 12th to 13th century. I can't remember exactly the year, but the English were attacking, and the Scottish had buried themselves under the ground so they could hide and pop up.
Yeah,
And they did that a lot. But on the mountain, on the ridge, they lured the English in, and then they played bagpipes on top of the mountain, but one guy would end his note as the next guy would begin his note, and it sounded like ghosts circling the mountain.
yeah.
And it scared the shit out of the English.
There's a lot of stuff that I think
I love tactics.
There's a lot of stuff in tactics authors miss. When it comes to writing fight scenes, they're very bereft.
In my books, by the way, I steal from history. I do.
Good place to
start. Grint, my main goblin, is essentially Genghis Khan.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
One of my heroes of Camelot, not the hero of the book, but heroes, like one of the knights, is essentially Alexander the Great. And I use their tactics.
He's a good friend to have.
Yes.
One of the things they always talk about Napoleon. Before there was Napoleon, there was Alexander. Napoleon was just the guy who came along and says, "Oh, nobody knows about this guy. Oh, yeah, in my pocket."
Every commander in history, Western history, has compared themselves to Alexander the Great. And
because they know Napoleon is
and they always fail.
Napoleon's
so,
a Xerox.
With my Goblin King, and he started out as a minor character and turned into this holy crap. So what he does is he's a goblin, and he has a little goblin in a wagon with a ballista. And a ballista, in case your people don't know, ballista is a giant bow.
Yeah,
I know you know. I know you know. I was just making sure everybody else knows.
People out there, people out there. Once upon a time,
so
rope, and they came knocking. They came knocking with giant bows.
Yeah. So he's in this wagon with a giant bow, and
Yep.
the arrows he's got are hollow. And so the Goblin King will say, okay, arrow number 5, full cock or half cock or whatever, because it's going to have the right tone. And it's a tone to signal his men on what to do. But he also has another goblin behind him on another wagon that has standards. So he has to raise a certain standard or certain standards, if there's more than one, to let them know when that arrow goes, it's for them. So they can tell, okay, there's the signal. Oh, that's for us.
Yeah.
So and that is straight out of Genghis Khan. I stole that.
Yeah.
I don't even mind admitting it.
Yeah. I think I'm sure. I think the English used for a while too whistling arrows to draw.
Yes.
Yes, whistling arrows.
Whistling arrows have always been a really good signal, because you travel a long ways and you can hear them.
Yeah, and it was long before flares. Anybody thought of flares? Because why would you use flares when you had whistling arrows? Good inventions have stopped better inventions, but it's hard to convince people of better inventions sometimes.
When I was in the Marines, the signal to get the hell out of there was me popping one grenade. And it was just a smoke grenade. But it told everybody get the hell out of there because I was about to start firing grenades.
Smoke? Yeah, you don't want to be here. What's this, smoke? Yeah, you don't want to be here for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As you get that little pop of smoke, you're going, okay, get the hell out.
Yeah.
So I tell people this a lot. I'm a good guy now. I wasn't always a good guy.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I did.
Yeah. See, I know basically there's a lot of challenges to writing, and like you said, a good place to start is borrow from history. Okay. There are some wackadoos out there. I mean,
I steal history, and I steal philosophy, I steal mythology. Yeah. I'm a thief.
But at least, like you admit it, George. Took George Lucas 20 years to even admit that he had a co-writer.
I can't even tell. I'm not sure, but I might have stole from George Lucas too. I don't know anymore.
It's not his. It wasn't his. He borrowed as well.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah, everybody.
Okay, so if you think about it, my heroes are, and just bear with me for a second. My heroes are a physical, a mental, and a spiritual. I stole from the Bible.
Gonna steal from the best.
I mean, I didn't realize it when I did it. No, but I was reading it later on going, wait a minute.
But I mean, throughout history, I mean, Shakespeare's the most borrowed from.
Yeah, and I do steal from him a lot.
And I forget who said it. He was a really famous director at the time. I just, it'll come to me later. It doesn't matter. But he's saying there's only 14 stories to tell. The trick is to make people forget that you've already told the story.
It's 27 stories, but yes.
No, well, I'm talking about when he's talking about, making a movie in a certain genre.
Okay.
In that, in that genre.
But there is a book saying that there's only 27 stories. And
yeah, but I'm talking about when he's doing westerns, I think it was at the time.
Genres and stuff.
Yeah, he's only saying, I've only got 14 stories to work with. The trick is to make people forget that I've told them before.
So we were talking about writing, and one of
Yeah.
the things I do is, and nobody ever takes me up on it, but I will ask somebody who wants a story. Give me a genre, and then I'll try to
Wow.
write something. I've been doing that since I was 14.
Right.
But now the friends I had that would do that with me are, well, one of them's in England, one of them's in Germany. You know, I don't have the. But one of the things I love to do is, and we were talking about writing styles, is it challenges me. I like the challenge of, okay, come up with something. Now it's like I said, it's Twitter, so I only have a certain amount of characters, but I try to tell a story as best I can in those.
In that,
That was it.
in that, yeah, in that confine. It is a confine. Everybody's in a confine. If you're writing a novel, I think I've always broken the confine. I've always burst that dam. I've always gone too little or too far, and that's because you've got to be different. You can't, everybody today. One of the biggest problems facing writers today is the tools that can help us are also the tools that could wear us down. You
So
don't
here's
need
how
them.
I went. Here's how I went about writing.
Yeah.
Is I grew up reading fantasy novels and things like that.
Yeah.
And they use such pretty flowery language. I went, no, I'm just going to tell it as if I was saying it. And that's my writing style is more direct. I will describe stuff, but I'm not going to use overly flowery language.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
It does. It does. It does. But I'm just saying, right? The tools today, I won't name a particular tool, but everybody knows what a spelling and grammar checker is. You've
Yes.
got Microsoft Editor, Grammarly, ProWriter, etc. They all have the same running features. Like at first they start as an ordinary spell checker, and 99% of us will run just the spell check, get it right, and think we're done. Grammar check, they'll start finding commas out of place, etc.
Besides that, grammar check a lot of times is wrong.
And that's where it is. Every grammar checker, you go back and check your old work, all the new it's never. And here's the thing that I learned from an editor: it's never going to be right because you may be using the Oxford rules, they may be using the Chicago rules, they may be using 1883. I forget
English
Harvard.
standard.
Yeah, Harvard, which is I think also the 1883 standard.
Yes.
And Princeton, I think, revised, 1917 rules of, 1917 or something like that.
I think sometimes I misspell things on purpose because I'm writing a fiction.
Yeah.
So if I spell things wrong on purpose, it kind of gives a different feel.
Yeah. But what's happening
I think I do. I don't know for sure. I don't know.
The tools are pushing writers into a minimalist. And that works if you're a minimalist. But for somebody writing prose, it's going to be hard to take their work because first they're going to do a spell check, fine. Then they do a grammar check. And depending on the grammar program, they're going to find errors. And then they're going to find errors and errors and errors until it's refined from the original text down to hello. Hello, goodbye. It's
that works for me with Bomo, but not for my book. Bomo speaks in small sentences, but my book, that's and I agree with you.
Yeah.
It tends to. I mean, I was re-editing my book after the grammar check, and I got to looking at it and went, no. It says we be no. it was completely wrong.
Yeah, and you're at the mercy of AI. You're at the mercy, and that is the problem with spelling and grammar checks now. You're at the mercy of AI. You can't do it without connecting to the internet. You can't, and it'll slow down your entire computer. Like the more you got to check, it'll slow everything down, and it will. And if you leave it running, you open a web page and it starts spell checking, grammar checking.
Well, I think one of the things that myself included, writers today do is we depend on it too much instead of our words. And I include myself in this.
Yeah.
We don't depend on our words. We depend on the technology to make our words right. It's like AI. I can't use, my art I make from AI because my hand shakes.
Yeah.
But I get these people contacting me all the time with either AI or ghostwriters. And I'm going, I've got my words. I don't need that. You know?
I have. I've had people too, give me $5,000 and I'll finish your novel,
Yeah, I don't need that. And they always, and I'm thinking to myself when they're asking me that, I'm going, okay, how do you know where I was going to go with this book? How do you know which characters I was going to emphasize?
A good ghostwriter, what they do is they interview you chapter by chapter, and then they go back and write the dialogue.
But wouldn't that just be me writing it?
No, it's you verbalizing it, them doing the writing of the verbalization.
That's how I make my art, but yeah. I like my words.
Absolutely.
I like my words. I can't give them up to somebody else.
See,
they're like my kids.
Yeah. See, I think eventually the online editing programs, because they're here to stay, they will become better at editing rather than just
editing. I would allow them to do.
Yeah.
I just don't want them writing for me.
Yeah. And I do. Every time they offer writing assist, no. And they say change active to passive voice. I go, no, that's a person speaking. People do not generally speak in active voice. Stop changing people how they speak. How sure, you know, if it's a fight scene, I'll go, yes, I definitely want an active voice. But in something slow, you want a passive voice.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I'm writing a book right now on casino surveillance, and you need a passive voice in it.
Yeah.
But if you're writing about a person, they should be an active voice.
Yeah. Sometimes I do. See, I always tend to be passive, and at times it's hard for me to switch over and try to think in active voice.
I think with me, it depends on the scene. So I've used passive voice in how my vampire kept getting killed.
Yeah.
It wasn't him saying, oh, I get killed. Yeah, I use passive voice in that. But then with my heroes, when they're addressing something, I use active voice. So I switch back and forth.
Now, different people will tell you different things. With fight scenes, particularly, I'm finding far too many like, you know, they're just so simple and it's hard to describe. Like we see the enemy, we engaged, the firefight was intense, and it's
I don't like that part. No,
there's too much.
If it's action, you got to have action. You got to give details.
Show, yes.
Now you might have to, depending on who your audience is, you might have to curtail the violence or increase it.
I think at times that's what they've done, is that they've probably written a good scene and the editor's gone.
Yeah,
And that's it.
I'm lucky. My editor listens to me.
But what I'm thinking is that you got these cookie. As I'm looking at different genres and stuff, and I'm always looking to improve, and I'm studying fight scenes to try and improve. But some of them are just like so cookie cutter, straight down the line. You got
Honestly, as somebody who's been in combat, most combat is cookie cutter.
yeah.
And you can elaborate on it and make it all pretty and fancy, but it all comes down to
Yeah.
So we're talking about the sword.
Yeah.
You take the sword, you punch the guy with it, and you're done.
Most
That's
of the time,
not good writing, though.
no. But most
Because
of the
that's
time,
boring.
yeah. Look, I hate this. I hate to disagree, but most of the time it is true that most fight scenes are going to be like the first. It's usually the first. As soon as somebody gets stabbed in a fight, if they're not dead, they're still not going to want to fight.
No. But what I'm saying is, it would be a boring scene if every time he got in a fight, he walked up and just popped the guy and he fell down.
Yeah.
So that's why they elaborate on the fight scenes.
I just did a video on it. Yeah, that you've got to make every fight scene different. You've got to make every fight scene impactful and meaningful. You just can't pop.
And it's got to be kind of a distance. Now, there could be one or two where, just to show the skill of the guy, where he just walks up and goes, "I'm done," and walks away.
Yeah.
But if all of your fight scenes are like that, you wouldn't really have an audience.
But see, in fantasy, you have different genres where, right, you can have where progressive fantasy, you can't walk up to a giant and stab him and go, "Ha, I'm done," because like he's just
you got to have some fights that are longer.
He'll just pull it out and say knitting needle, and drop it on your head. Yeah, drop.
I had a scene in one of my stories where the guy was he was a magician, and he had the ability to turn incorporeal.
Yeah.
So he picked up 5 swords, jumped in a giant, left the swords in there, and then jumped out.
Nuts.
So the sword had the giant had 5 swords in his body, and every time he moved, he cut himself.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes I'm twisted.
That is a terrible death. Agonizing. Agonizing death, but
imaginative.
Yeah, it is very imaginative. How would you fight somebody incorporeal? That you freeze them.
Yeah. If you're corporal, you'd have there's several ways. You can freeze them. You can. One of the things I always did with my guys, my characters, is they would have a special talent. Like one of them, all he did was inspire fear. One of them, he was able to go incorporeal. One of them, he just didn't feel pain and you couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
He was immortal. So and I use that in my book. Like Clarent is the sword that makes Jason the king of Camelot.
Reminds me of the stories of the Chinese tale of the 3 brothers. I don't know if you heard it.
I have.
The merchant.
Tell it anyway, because some other people may not have.
Okay, there was this merchant who had 3 sons, and on the way to the market, he committed a sin against the emperor. He did not recognize the emperor and did not bow. So the emperor came to arrest him, and all they found was the 3 sons. So they took the oldest son as a hostage, and still the merchant did not show himself. So the emperor went to behead the first son. But when his sons were born, they were each gifted by the immortals a gift. And the oldest son he had an iron neck. So when the emperor went to cut off his head, it didn't come off. So he rested the next son and threw him in the river. But he was gifted
with breathing.
Infinite breath. And so the emperor threw the last son into the fire, but he was infinitely fireproof.
Yeah, he was immortal to fire. And I like those kind of stories.
Yes.
Have you ever heard the story of the Monkey King?
No.
It's Chinese. He started out as a clay monkey.
Yes.
He was a doll. And a wizard gave him life. So he could now move. But he was still clay.
Yeah.
He learned magic, turned himself to flesh. Then he he went down underground to where there was a dragon. He beat up the dragon and took his staff, which could fit behind his ear or turn to 8 to 10 feet long.
And for people who don't know, this story was this is one of the most, now I recognize it, it's one of the most plagiarized individual stories in the world, The Monkey King.
Yes.
And it was even made into a TV series, not once, but twice.
And a movie twice.
And people
but the
know
original story.
Yeah.
He went to heaven and was causing havoc. So they sent him back down. The king of heaven, the emperor, sent his sons and their armies to kill him. And him and the other monkeys whooped their asses.
Yes.
So he went back to heaven, and the emperor of heaven says, just give him a job. Yeah, that way, just calm him down. Give him a job. So they put him in charge of the corrals at first. But he was not doing his job. So they said, okay, you can take care of the peaches. Well, the peaches, each different type of peach in Chinese heaven gave you more life. So he ate all the peaches.
Yeah. It's in charge of the corral. He left the gate open, and that's actually the corral is where he met the pig. Because they would pigs.
The only way they were able to stop him is
drink with him. Yes,
the Indra of Buddha laid a mountain on him. Now it didn't kill him. He just couldn't move.
Yeah, he couldn't move.
Put a mountain on him until he would behave. Like you said, this is not my story. This is just a good story.
Yeah, he'd cry out, but I'm not sorry, I was bored. I needed to sleep, but I needed to sleep. I'm bored.
Oh, he ends up getting hooked up with the first emperor.
Yes.
But that's beside the point.
But yeah. Now, in Irish tales, of course, there's Fun, and Fun was basically pretty much the same.
Yes. I've noticed that the ancient English gods were just variations of the Norse gods, or the Norse gods were variations of the English gods.
Quite a bit of both, I think. This is why you have Wednesday.
Yeah.
If people look at the names of the week.
Woden's Day.
Yeah. Mon, Wednes, Thurs. It was.
The only one I don't know is what Monday. Because Thursday is Thor's Day, Wednesday is Woden's Day, or Odin's Day.
Depending where you are, Wednes, Woden. Because they were always to sound like not one, but one or more names. Because if you look at because there was a lot, right? You had the English, the Norse, and some French. But Mon was Mother's Day. Every Monday was Mother's Day. Mon. Every Monday was Mother's Day.
So
how's that, ladies?
Here's a little bit for you from my book.
Yeah.
The first god created was the mother.
but it was also Moon's Day. That's what I said. It was
Well,
2
no,
days.
I meant my book.
One. Yeah. Oh,
I
your
just meant
book.
my book.
Right. Yeah.
First God created was the mother. The second one was the father, and the reason being is because Telesur couldn't speak to them because it would kill them.
Right.
So he created someone for her to hang out with. But then he imparted the knowledge into their heads. Go create stuff. And so they went and they created the gods. So they were the gods before the gods. They created the gods. The gods are split between the Nusal Rim or Nusal Ram and the Nusal Yin, which two sides of the gods, one always fighting the other. We've seen this in all kinds of mythology. So what they did together is they created the elves.
Yes.
And then they created the humans because the elves needed something to compete with. Otherwise, they would never grow. But then the Nusal Ram created dwarves in secret. They didn't tell anybody they made them.
Yeah.
And gnomes. The giants were created by both sides so that the humans and elves had something to fight, something to join them together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
The Nusaram corrupted elves and made goblins.
Right.
And the goblins themselves made, I'll think of it. I'm trying to think of the word.
Are you thinking of hobgoblins or the gnomes? Not gnomes.
No,
Sorry, seraphim.
gremlins and that kind of
Gremlins.
thing.
Right.
The wizards from the goblins made all the little weird
Gremlins.
creatures.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history.
Yeah. Yeah. But you need history in fantasy. You need it, otherwise you can't.
Yeah, if you can't
be
tell
consistent.
if you can't tell the history, you don't have a story, in my opinion.
Now, it's amazing how many franchises have actually gotten away by pantsing the living shit out of this. Every story they've forgotten that, there's no learning, there's no correlate, you can take some books out of order and it doesn't matter because there's no interconnection other than character names. There's no history.
There was a show, I can't remember the name of it because my memory's gone, but it was a book series about basically Earth evolved into fantasy.
Yeah.
And they didn't really do a good job of giving history of why. Why did humans turn into dwarves? Why did they turn into orcs? Why did they turn into elves? I think you need that.
Yeah.
I like for my readers to have
a history.
Yeah, a reason. Yeah, a reason why. Why is this guy attacking Camelot? Well, he wants it.
Why does he want it? Well,
he
it's
wants it because and if you go back to the histories, he wants it because there's humans there, and humans have tortured his race forever.
So he wants to play noogie for a little while.
Yeah, he wants the prize and saying, "Hey, I won."
One. Yeah, he wants. Yeah,
and that's the kind of stuff I try to like. There's a creature in there called a Hagridon, and they're the main diet of dragons.
Yeah.
So, but they're also really big because dragons are huge.
Yeah.
So they have bone heads and bone tails as they developed for defense. But now mortals, not just humans, but humans, goblins, whoever, have started raising them to beat through castle walls with their heads and tails.
Oh, that's very clever. Yes.
Well, the way they have to do it, though, is they wrap a thing around their nose that smells like dragon. And they raise mini dragonkin to get the smell.
Yeah.
So that the Hagridon will be afraid enough to try to drive himself through that wall.
Yeah. Because of the pain of impact. Yeah.
Yeah. If they're not afraid, they won't do it.
Mm.
I won't give a spoiler on this one, but they get changed.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. Direction.
I know a lot of people. I don't want to give spoilers because I know you're reading the book right now. I know a lot of people don't get the hidden, don't pick it up the first time with Cade. What's going on with Cade? And it's really. I will say though, Cade is the main living character, but the main character of the story is the Empire.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shows when I was younger was Firefly, because Firefly was the ship was actually a character in the show. I like when people use a thing as a character, because it's got character.
Yeah. And see, I'm tossing up, right? I've done the boyhood. Cade's now a horny teenager. I'm almost finished that, and my mind is always racing ahead to the good part's coming. I had this really good part. I want to race, and I want to skip a couple of books to that. I'm really tempted to skip a couple of books.
I get you there. I've already written the end of the third book.
Yeah.
So I get you.
I got the current book and then the next book, which is like he's a maturing adult. He's got his.
By the way, that's my dog.
Right. I heard the bark. And of course, he's got to do his service. His mandatory service. Otherwise, he can't be a noble.
I like that. It's so far, I like it.
Yeah.
I think you're a damn good author.
The struggle is always because I don't want to make it sound like magic is a superpower, okay? But I'm trying to convey how it has limits. Like his grandfather said to him, anybody can get killed, even me.
One of the things I use in mine is it's a rule of the gods. Whatever you do to somebody else, you feel if you're using magic. So one of my heroes didn't know this, and he kills an ogre and basically passes out crying because he felt everything that ogre felt.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I've heard of empathic magic, but what I'm trying to do is how to convey the power levels, how to convey how he grows in power levels. Because a lot of books these days just write down, hey, I'm now level 12.
Yeah. I would go with descriptions of how he's feeling when he casts magic. So at first, when he's casting magic, it's a freaking struggle, and he's next time, a couple times later, it's okay. It wasn't so hard, and the effect was greater. And then next time, he's just kind of going, okay, and the effect is just kind of build.
And because I'm trying to convey that your magic rating is merely how much mana you can hold, right? Because you can analyze that. and that gives you an idea that, but everybody's different. Like, you can actually learn skills to increase your mana levels. You can host demons. You can carry magic rocks. You can do all sorts of stuff to increase the amount of mana you got, because ultimately it comes down to two things you've got to be good at: defense and conserving mana. Outlast the enemy, because
So here's what I did in my book, and I stole this from mythology, is a wizard to cast magic has to have words, movements of the hands, and an object. But as they get better, they don't need those. As an example, Merlin, he just wants it to happen. David, my little wizard, he's a natural. He didn't have to learn that. He just wraps his mind around the magic and makes it happen.
Yeah.
But there's one of the wizards in there. So you can pull magic from other people in mine.
Yeah.
If usually it's willing. I mean, otherwise you're a dick. But one of the wizards in there figures out that because everything in this world has magic.
Yeah.
And so he's pulling magic from the microbes. So he always has full magic. Because he's pulling
I've heard that somewhere. I've seen that in an anime. Where the wizard is always drawing. The wizard is always drawing from the mosquitoes and the fireflies. And somebody figures it out.
I never saw that, but that is exactly what I was talking about. He's pulling it from microbes, mosquitoes, fireflies, whatever.
Yeah.
But this one here is being polite because he needs the magic, but he doesn't want to suck it out of people, because in my book, when you suck the magic out of people, it gives them a deep, deep sadness. And so he's just doing the insects,
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think there wasn't much magic in the Tales of Foon, but I do remember one of the Celtic tales about a magician who was always using his magic to trick people.
Yeah, I remember that too.
And the king sent out challenges to try and
Carolyn, I think it was.
No, get him to work for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that was actually the original version of Merlin.
Yeah, and I think
and then they just turned him into a good guy,
They did. The hunter, he took what's her name's mirror and held it up to his face, and it changed, and they spoke with the reflect. They basically tricked him to swapping places. So
there's another one
where the magic mirror comes from. Mirror on the wall. He didn't want to work for the king, but what he did was he put he put whatever was good in him left into the mirror and sent him back. And so the king would always have the good wizard to talk to.
There was a Cyclops god from Ireland named Belor.
Yeah.
Which is actually an English and a Viking god. He was just a weapon.
Belor is also where we get the greater demon from.
Yeah. Yep.
Because eventually he descended.
Like I said, I like to study shit. So
now get this: when I was studying the Legends of the Irish, I came across the Denala. Now the Denala came from India, lived in Spain, and they invaded Ireland in 3500 BC. And I
wonder if that was based on a human that they just
it is.
and then deified him.
Yeah, Denala led the Celts. Now,
Okay.
if you do look, the Celts were across the Black Sea.
The Celts were everywhere.
They were all the way through the Grass Sea, and of course, if you look at the Grass Sea, that's almost all of southern Russia or northern India. The Great Plains that were they were everywhere. Yeah.
Now the other one was Boudica. Boudica was for England. Was just a great leader because she fought the Romans away.
Yes, and they tore down her statue, the bitches.
Did they?
Yeah, Boudica was removed from London Square, I believe.
Well, that sucks. She's one of their heroes.
Yeah, they replaced her with somebody else. I forget who, but I mean that's just the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it happens, but still sucks.
It does, but I still think I think Boudica was born in Wales, I believe.
And
lived in what's the West Midlands, straight across from London. Like,
I'm not really good at geography, so I'm going to just go. You're probably right.
I understand.
He's probably Welsh.
She rallied the Celts because the Celts would never unite under a chief, right? Because they're always, if I make you, I won't bow. They wouldn't bow to another man.
The other side of it is, she rallied the Celts when her husband wouldn't.
Couldn't? Yeah, that's right. Her husband wouldn't know, but I don't. But
I like heroes.
I bow to him, he'll never hear the end of it. So that's
there's
the thing,
one of the things that people don't even take into account. I like history. I like generals. I like tactics. And one of the greatest generals of all time isn't really considered a great general, and that was Cochise. But the reason he's not considered a great general is because the victors write the history.
Victors. Yeah.
But he rallied all the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And they had been divided for 1,000 years.
Well, probably longer, but yeah.
Probably longer.
I would say at least 1,000 years.
That was just a guess.
But I do remember.
Also, Sitting Bull.
Yeah, Sitting Bull, but Cochise, Running Bull, and
the one that was not a good general, but was a good general at the same time was, I'll think of his name. He was an Apache. Geronimo. Now, actually, I say he wasn't a good general because he didn't use a lot of tactics, but he was a good general in the fact that he led his people from the front, and he would do crazy shit just to make him think he was a god.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Geronimo he wasn't a good general, but he was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got allergies today.
I can understand a lot of people's thinking where it's the same everywhere. In every period, you've got to have the enemy. Otherwise, because if you think of him as a person, then you start asking questions. Why? He's just got to be the bad guy. Otherwise, you have to ask questions and face uncomfortable truths. And it's the same with the Romans.
There was one point in American history where, after the Civil War, we recruited black soldiers to kill Indians.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically said, oh, you're not going to be slaves anymore if you kill these guys.
Yeah, but see, when you're thinking about terms of power,
Yeah.
right? When you're thinking about what's best, what's going to keep me in power, governments are always thinking, what is the shortest? What is the easiest? What is going to get me the quickest results? A lot
True.
of people are not thinking of what are the consequences.
Yeah. What's going to happen in the future?
Yeah, what's going to happen if we defeat them? What's going to happen if we go to war? What's going to happen? A lot of think tanks, right? We're
Yeah.
spending millions of dollars on these think tanks to give us shortest results to political desires, which aren't even driven by the people anymore.
In the U.S., that's called DARPA.
No, DARPA's just the board. They're not. They're the ones who are
That's true.
given the
Very true.
question.
Very
They
true.
are given DARPA run Google, Facebook, Twitter to some extent. They still got their fingers in every pie, whether it's by direct proxy, where they have an agent in place,
So
or
that
they
brings
have a
up a good
government
point.
mandate. They have a
I've,
government
I've said
mandate.
for years, if you are an evil villain, you don't want to be the boss.
No,
You
you
want to
have to,
be the advisor because the advisor gets to live.
yeah. And that's actually the same. That's actually, if you look at the Arabian Nights, that is actually, you look at who's the villain, the vizier, not the king, the
Yeah,
vizier.
yeah, it's the advisor, but they kill the king, not the
So
vizier.
because the king hired the advisor, the king did what the advisor told him. Therefore, they see the king as the weak man.
Exactly, and or they see him as the one coming up with those ideas. The advisor is the one coming up with the ideas, and he's just saying them out loud.
No, the advisor always has the excuses says, but I serve my liege. I
Yeah,
serve you, my liege.
exactly.
The,
Okay, you just used the word liege, and I have had 3 people in the last week ask me what the hell that means. I know what it means.
it's old English.
It is. It is. But I've had actually 3 people, actually, because I used the word liege, and 3 people in the last week went, What does that mean? I'm like, Okay, he's your lord. That's all it
Actually,
means.
it's also the name of a town and the city and the municipality of which now
Oh, but the
liege,
way I was using it was,
yes, is the highest lord.
yeah,
Liege is the highest lord. That's all it means. It's doesn't have to be
he's your
king.
master. That's
My
if he
liege
says
is
something, you got to
the
do it.
highest lord. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're the highest power of the land. That's why lords would not say my king; they would say my liege
exactly.
because he was the highest lord. It was not necessarily
It was
what
my
they would.
liege. Lower than that was my grace or
My
your
grace
grace.
was
Your
usually,
grace.
or your grace was the bishop because he was the
Yeah,
advisor of the king. That's
yeah,
how the bishops. That's what a bishop was. They were advisors.
yeah.
They were political
Well,
and religious advisors.
eventually they were controllers, but
Well, exactly. That's what happens when you
when you
because
exactly that's what we were talking about. The advisor becomes the king, kind of.
yeah. And if you look at some of the biggest atrocities in history, like the genocide of Seville. That was not ordered by the caliphate. That was ordered by the vizier of the caliphate so that he would meet his quota of gold.
Well, even the
See,
destruction.
they needed the caliphate of Spain had to meet a quota of gold to pay the Moors, right? When you execute a man, his property becomes property of the state. So
Yeah.
to meet their wages for that month, he had 20,000 men killed so that he could take their gold teeth.
Now, here's the other one: is even the Knights Templar.
Yeah,
They were basically destroyed by a vizier because somebody told the Pope, "Hey, you're gonna."
A bishop.
They're taking over.
Yeah,
and
a bishop who had never visited Paris, never visited Marseille, never visited the Holy Lands, somehow woke up and said one day to the Pope, Christ visited me and said that these men are in danger because they don't answer to the Roman army, you know?
Yeah. It's happened.
And they're heretics because they read books.
It's happened since Babylonian times.
Yeah, they're heretics because they read the wrong books.
Yeah. See, now I'm of the opinion that, and this is my philosophy.
But they were heretics in the eyes of Rome because they were reading the original Bible and not the Roman edited version.
Oh, of course, they were heretics in that version. Now,
and they admitted to being heretics. So, you know, there is
my personal view on religion is, I don't care what your religion is, just don't be an ass.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done with you.
It works for 80% of the people, but you know, there's always that guy.
There are. My family is one of them.
I said to one guy, "Why do you care that Catholics praise Mary?" No, they don't praise Mary, they worship Mary. And I said, "Okay, why does it bother you?" Block. Why does it bother you? And I say the same to other religions. Why does it bother you that guy? Oh, because I have to save him. So you're just meeting a quota, do you? That you do understand that eventually you'll run out of people to convert, and then you'll turn on each other, you know. And then
I can kind of understand it. I don't agree with it, but I can kind of understand it. So let's say
people come up with justifications for being a dick.
Oh, no. But I'm not even going with being the dick part.
All right.
Let's say you knew you were going to heaven.
Right.
And you knew I was going to hell. Would you not try to save me? You don't have to be a dick about it. That's the point.
That's the point. Yes.
I can see them trying to save us, even if I don't agree with them.
But the thing is, you also got to recognize the fact that it's God's greatest gift is free will, and
it's your choice.
If you have to take away somebody's free will in order for you to engage in the sophistry of saving them, then no, you're not saving them.
So now, kind of heads up for you, I come from a long line of preachers. Yeah. I'm not a preacher.
No.
But I have seen all sides of that. And the one that always got me were the evangelists, because they demanded, whereas a preacher would just talk to you.
Yeah. Evangelicalism, I understand it. I've met them. But unfortunately, 8 out of 10 it's the opposite, right? It is religion. It is.
No, I completely agree with you on that.
It's normally when you get a group, it'd be 2 out of 10 would be the dick, but this time you get 8 out of 10, and you always meet the nice ones first. You always meet the ones who still believe in free will. It's just,
and then then you meet the others.
Yeah,
I used to go to these things called tent meetings when I was a kid.
I know them. Yep.
And they were nice. They weren't assholes, but it was one of those things. I'm going, okay, you're trying to force your religion on somebody else.
It's not just forcing their religion; it's their version in their multiple and to they use.
Because there's like a whole bunch of versions of Christianity,
of every religion, every religion, not just Christianity. Like you had different versions from the start when Christ said, "Teach, go forth and teach." each would give what their account, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's why there's differences, because they didn't see everything all and did not hear everything.
They didn't know everything.
Yeah. And then you had Thomas, who had later written down various sayings that he remembered, and then they were banned as heretical, and they were actually burning the library. I know what happened.
I actually have 2 copies of the Book of Enoch.
Yeah. There's also there's 3 different books out there which were later all combined to create another book, and then that book was mixed with other books to create another book. But when you go down to it, you had Peter, who wrote pretty much what you would call the Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
You had
he was the first pope.
Yeah. And then you had the Gospels, which were gathered by Constantine, and he wanted those to be the new Catholic Bible.
But that was also 300 years afterwards.
312 years and so many days. Yes, I know. But the problem is, you had too many people who would say, my book is the Bible, your book isn't. So he had to make more and more compromises in order, and the more cities he visited, every city had a book. Every city had a library full of these books. And in some places, they found thousands of books, all with the different
stories.
No.
Or different versions.
I think it's like, today I prayed and this happened. The chronicle. I believe they're called chronicles. Your religious experiences. People would chronicle their religious experiences.
All right. I've heard of those.
This is how Christianity spread. There was a lot of it wasn't spread by the Gospels. A lot of it was spread by the miracles and people would come to the Library of Alexander, and see, that's when the Muslims came. They burnt it because they said it was heretical. But people were praying to this in the ruins of Library of Alexander. People were praying to the tablets, which were the saying, which the tablets themselves, they would have scrolls. They would hold the scrolls of Thomas.
Yeah, they were actually not praying to the scroll. They were reading the scroll and praying.
Yeah, reading the scrolls as they prayed. So they were reciting prayers from St. Thomas, and the Muslims burnt this. They considered heretical. But later, everybody, the land said the land had become cursed, because since then the great forests of the Middle East have all died and decayed.
Yeah.
All North Africa turned into a wasteland. Well,
there was no I'll think of it. They ruined the topsoil like they did in Oklahoma. They ruined the topsoil, and that's why the Israel cedars and the north Egypt became a desert.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it was, whether it coincided or not is irrelevant, because it happened. Okay, you can't deny that in the Roman times they were forests, and after the Roman times, after the great sacking of the great sacking of Egypt, from that time forth, the land was barren
and became a desert.
Yeah,
and I agree.
And even the Bedouins say it's their fault. Even the Bedouins say yes, it was their fault, because they're going from, and I've seen the
now they got to live in it.
Yeah,
so they got to admit their shit.
Yeah, they. But until the Great Redemption, of course, they know. They said, there's nothing we can do. Until the Great Redemption, that's it. But people, a lot of people say, "Oh, because it was written," and that's a bad mistake because as it was
They say it
written,
was what?
right, a lot of their prayers end in with "as it was written," right?
Oh,
You
okay.
also get the Lord's Prayer, the
Okay.
kingdom as it was written. The problem is they burnt the fucking book. So how are people? That's what they did when they destroyed Alexander. It's the same thing when they tried to destroy the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were told by the Catholics to protect the holy books, and amongst them were the Chronicles of Miracles, the books of Thomas, Enoch, etc. And it's like anything: you get 10 guys together, and you take them on a tour right? And then you tell them to write a report. Are they going to write the same report?
No. I
So
wrote
how are you going
reports for
to
27 years. And I saw my other reports, the other people. No, 3 people will not write the same report.
So how are you expecting, right, 12 bishops to understand 3.5 thousand books
Yeah.
approximately?
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
How are you expecting them to actually understand why the people preferred the Chronicles of Miracles to the Gospels? But to the Gospelites, that was heresy.
Now,
But to the Roman Catholics, that the Gospelites are heretics because they're only reading the word of the they're only reading the word of the four
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Can I put you on pause for a second? I got to go to the
Yeah,
restroom.
righto. I will talk to people while you were gone.
All right, I'll be right back.
Recently I did a video on writing about writing fight scenes. And I actually did compare. I'd actually not sure if I still got. No, I don't have. I don't often keep um, my notes on my computer. Sorry, but you need to have a reason for a fight. Make it clear to the reader. You gotta, and throughout history, okay, when you were going to borrow from history, of course you're not going to sit down and citation of everything, but you've got to make sure that it's like most stories are conflict. The conflict has to make sense. There has to be details, active words, and varying of the sentences. You use shorter sentences to build tension. You use a longer sentence at the end of for the conclusion. This is now to control the pace. You vary the lengths, and you shorten, and you use dialogue to slow down the pace. Now, punctuation could also speed up or slow down the action, like too many commas. So, when it comes to the rule of grammar, and particularly when writing emotion and resolutions to the fight, a lot of people miss out on the fact that you don't have to exactly follow the rules of grammar, and that grammar Nazis should go. They're religious fanatics, okay, but every blow, every move may not key. Try to keep it to key movements. Um,
Draw the attention.
that's it, to draw the attention to. But one thing most people do when they resolve the outcome is they don't give consequences. I'm going back to the killing of the ogre. That was an amazing consequence.
There are a few consequences in my book.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite characters died, and I cried when I did it.
Yeah. I gave consequences to. You know, Cade almost loses his father, and both his grandfather of course, as you know, Cade becomes emperor. So yeah, just spoiler alert: Cade becomes emperor because for two reasons. One, he discovered a asteroid field full of Lonzonite, and if anybody knows anything, Lonzonite is like worth more than a diamond. Okay, and you find an asteroid field pretty much full of "Here come to me money." I'm talking 413 worlds in volume. That's
Since
how big the
you
asteroid field is.
since you gave a spoiler, I will too.
Yeah.
Vampire's trying to kill my hero,
Whoa.
and his mom shoots him,
Yeah.
and doesn't work.
Vampire. Yeah. Can't kill the dead.
Yeah, she didn't have her because I have magic in my book, but she didn't have the magic bullet, which would have probably killed him.
Oh yes. Vampires are not immune to magic or magic wholly. Now, contrary to popular belief, light does not kill vampires. It's actually holy light. It was just made popularized from the 18th century onwards that it was daylight. Because
and the reason that
in the 18th century, the atheism took hold in the West. So a lot of books were no longer, particularly when it comes to vampires, talking about holiness.
Well, that's another thing is they always show in movies and books where you just stab a vampire with a stake. Well, the stake was actually meant to pin them down to the ground. So you couldn't pull it out. You couldn't just stab them. You had to drive it in. And the roses, they planted roses on top of the graves of suspected vampires because the thorns would make them bleed.
Because that's the thing, the vampires, when they run out, they drink blood because they are dead, they can't produce new blood, so they have to constantly replenish it. But there's actually a thing that said vampires can eat and drink. It's just that they can't create new blood.
Well, they have to be able to eat and drink. That would make it doesn't do anything.
They can't create because they can't create new blood.
Yeah, it just doesn't do anything. Yeah, so and but with my main vampire in the book, he has changed his appearance to look more like a demon.
Yeah,
because people don't fight demons in the same way they fight vampires.
That's clever.
He's 10,000 years old. He learned.
He learned a trick or two, along the way. But see, spoiler, in my book, I go way back to the original demons, because demons were originally incorporeal.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't affect reality. They could only whisper in the darkness.
And into your ear.
Or possess you eventually. Yeah.
I have those in mind too. They possess the Camelocian Guard.
Yeah, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but there's demons, there's devils, there's all sorts of others as well.
You're a good writer, man. I really want to read all your stuff.
Yeah. However, I'm really tempted to jump Cade's education and go straight, but I've got to do it. I know it slows down the pacing of the story. Already slowed down the pacing of the story with Erotic Tales by writing a second one. But I mean, it's all character development. It's all, I know. It's all background and world building. And
I'm going to have to disagree with you on this in the fact that it's not too much. Whenever you're doing character development, it's important. Because if you don't have a 3D character, you don't have a character.
But I'm talking these days, too many people only want the 75,000 word novel, which has almost no characterization, almost no character development, no world building. And I'm not writing for them. I'm writing for the people who like who would
Yeah.
sit down and say, "Oh, book 20's out. I must be behind because I'm
uh,
up to book 20. Oh, you're behind. I'm on book 40, you know?"
I've had a couple people tell me that, okay, you need to shorten your book into two pieces. But then
Yeah.
I've had true fantasy fans go, no, don't you touch it. Don't.
Yeah.
And
That's the thing.
it's
If you're a true
almost,
fan of fantasy,
my book is almost 800 and something pages. Well, depending on
I,
your format, it's up to 900.
could you imagine if they're talking to Tolkien? Let's say Tolkien. Hey, Tolkien, shorten your book. Okay, The Hobbit
They
went for a
did.
walk. There you
They
go.
said that to him.
Yeah, take that out. Take
Well,
it out.
no. Lord of the Rings was one book,
Yeah.
and his publisher said no. And they made him break it into three. So they did do
But
that to Tolkien.
the
Here,
thing
hold
is,
on. I'm gonna get my book and I'm gonna show it to you.
yeah, yeah, I think Tolkien had all the notebooks. And he was talking with his publisher every second day about it, and about the book. And when he showed it to him, that's right. He says, "Where's the rest of it?" That's what
So
happened. Yeah,
here's mine.
yeah, yeah. Twice as thick as mine. Mine's this thick. Mine's this thick.
That's where I was going. I wrote a damn Bible.
Yeah. But I mean, true fantasy fans actually understand that
Yeah,
most of
they
the
don't
time,
want to
when
have
you
to
have
go get another book. The only
no,
problem I have with this one is if somebody is going to buy this while you're watching this,
yeah,
get the electronic version. This one is too expensive.
yeah. Here's the problem with Amazon. I thought, and a lot of people, I thought, if they're the biggest book company, why aren't they the most expensive? And I realized they've got no competition. I
The
mean,
only
come on,
ones,
Barnes and Noble, pull your finger out.
the only competition they have is Barnes and Noble, which
But they're not
basically is
really.
the same place.
Yeah, they're printed at the same place. Yeah, there's no competition. Like I said, there's no competition. It isn't.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to get going here in a minute.
Final thoughts on writing. Challenges writers face these days are enormous. Some people say there's too many writers. Other people say, it's a free market, and I understand that. But there are a lot of challenges facing writers to get not just pen to paper, but to get to the marketplace.
Getting to the marketplace is the hard part. I don't think
Yeah.
we have too many writers because everybody on earth is going to read
The problem
something.
is most only read one book.
Most actually read more than one. The
No, but I'm
few,
saying, yeah,
there are a few that only read one, but I don't think we
yeah.
have too
I'm
many
talking about
authors.
no, I'm talking about you've got most people, they do their mandatory reading in college, and then after that, they might only buy one book. That's what I'm saying. That's like
No,
50.
that's true. But
Yeah,
with as many people we got on earth,
there's
one
enough.
book is a
Yeah,
lot of books.
yeah,
Now, a lot of people are going to buy several books because I've talked to, well, my whole family, we read. So I've read 25, 30 books. Well, more than that. Anyway, but it's one of those things where I don't think we have too many writers. We need to get more readers.
yeah.
That makes sense?
That makes sense.
I think people are stopping reading
Yeah,
as much.
yeah.
It's
I'm
like
not
when
blaming movies because most movies are not adapting books anyway, or even properly adapting them.
well, let me go back to the internet. When the
Yeah,
internet first came out, and I've been a techie my whole life,
yeah.
the internet got people to actually start talking again. And then
Good.
it stopped and made them where they're not talking.
Yes.
Because when it first came out, all you could do was chat. And so,
And they weren't private. Everybody saw what you wrote.
yeah.
Everybody
And
saw it.
so,
There was no such thing as private. There was no peer-to-peer.
yeah. Of course, I've never been very private, but I know what you're saying. But then, because of that, I think people started just kind of hiding on the internet. And so we've stopped reading, we stopped talking, we stopped communicating as much. And I think that is the issue, is we need to communicate more and read more.
And get more readers. Absolutely get more readers. And I
And
think
I think we need to get them into the classics so that they want to read more. Because what you were talking about earlier, and you're right, a lot of writers just take the shortcut. Well,
they'll
if
write the
that's your
shortest book with a short adventure that probably has been retread so many times.
and if that's the first book you read, you're not going to want to read.
No, because they want to.
But if you go to like Tolkien, Hemingway, Bernstein,
Isaac Asimov, depends on your genre.
Exactly. If they start reading with the classics, they may want to read more.
Yes.
That was my point.
But don't compare new writers to the classics either. You know,
do not read my book as your first book.
Well, I can guarantee you it's not my first book. And the book I've read the most is my own. Okay,
I've read mine like 30 times. And by the way, so you know, there's a guy named Justin Scott, who's my friend, who killed my book. He killed it, just dead in the water, because it was 120 pages. And he went, "You're moving too fast. Slow down." And then that's when this happened.
Now, that is where true readers, it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. And with my characters, that's what I try to do, is it's not so much where they're going, it's how they got there.
Yeah. So definitely you've inspired me to
I have a new book cover I'm going to come out with for the next printing, but
yeah, because one thing I've seen an excellent ad for a book. It's tired of incompetent teachers, incompetent weak storylines, something else, and I was thinking, I wish I thought of that.
I hate when if somebody says something, I'm going, damn it, I could have said that.
I know what they were digging at too, but they just made it so clever. And I'm thinking, man, I got to read that book now.
I read a lot of this philosopher, Two Crows, and I look at a lot of his stuff and I'm going, holy crap, I could have said that.
But he dared to write it, I think. A lot of people dared to write it. I mean, same with Nietzsche. He dared to write what people were thinking.
Yeah. I write what I think all the time, and people look at me weird, but I don't care.
But you can't think. I do think. I mean, you can't look at Cade in the terms of good and evil, because
honestly,
evil,
I don't believe a character should be good or evil.
No.
So my main bad guy. So I'm going to give you a little spoiler on this because it's in the histories. It's in the histories, but he was the god of life.
Yes.
And his job was to watch what's going on and make suggestions to death on who he could take. Well, he was watching a girl he loved instead of an entire city that was dying. And then she was fighting. Do you know Greek, Norse gods?
Norse? Some, not all of them.
Okay, she was fighting Heimdall.
Heimdall, yes.
And he hit her with a hammer and just killed her ass that fast. He is ignoring the entire city. There was so what's going on in the city is there's a dragon and a giant fighting. And they're stepping on everything. So he's ignoring that and watching her. He sees Heimdall kill her. He flies down and he hits Heimdall so hard that he flies to the back of Valhalla and has to take a month to recover and then a month to get back. During which time he hides her dead body, because as long as death hasn't collected her, she can still be revived. So he hides her body. Death looks for her because he's going, she's dead. Where is she? And basically, I'm going to shorten it. Several things happen where Death is basically demanding her body, and he's still hiding it. Death finally gets her body so she can be brought back to Valhalla. And Valor, who's the god of life at the time, gets beaten down, demoted, and made the first vampire. Because while he was protecting her, nobody was allowed to die. So there are tons of undead now. And so they made him the god of the undead. But it was all for love.
And that is one of the greatest excuses throughout history for love.
And I don't like to have a character that's just one-dimensional. I like to, he's evil, but he's evil because this, that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really gone in depth into the villains because the villains are so subtle that it's the villain's the unknown. Even
my heroes are two-dimensional. Like one of my heroes is just incredibly fast and really good with a sword, but he notices that when he kills somebody, he enjoyed it, and so there's a monster in him.
Yeah.
So I look at him as he is, he's the Hulk and Bruce Banner. So the one that is in control is Bruce Banner, but when he gets to fighting, sometimes he hulks out.
Somewhat like the Viking Berserker.
Yes. Except for he really doesn't want to let the monster go.
No.
He always tries to keep that monster in control. But sometimes
the Berserkers, they knew they were monsters and they wanted to die in battle because they were monsters. But
they actually wanted to be monsters.
But also at the same time, yes.
And that's the difference in him. He doesn't want to be the monster. He just wants to control that sucker.
Vikings didn't call themselves that. That is what they were referred to by law, and that Vikinging was their profession, and Vikinging was outlawed in Norway, but was permissible outside of Norway, and I think it was around 870 AD when it was outlawed completely.
One of the berserker things they did is they would tie themselves back to back.
Yeah.
Before they berserked. Then they would take their mushrooms.
Yep.
And the guy on your back was your shield.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Another one was that they'd go out hunting, they'd skin a wolf once, or cover themselves in the blood and the skin of the wolf, and then they would go out, and then they would find a poor, unfortunate village to
destroy.
They were to destroy, to occupy, to do as they please, That was the real, and then they'd hunt down their victims until there was none alive. You know, that was
The other one was, and I like I said, I studied a lot of weird stuff.
yeah,
In Viking history. They have Damascus blades,
yeah,
but the reason they had them, they didn't do it on purpose. They would basically take over something and get all the metal and then melt it all down and make swords out of it. Well, it was several different qualities of metal which made Damascus. And then
Now,
they figured out, hey, that works pretty good.
but when they came, this is the thing that most people don't know in history. The Damascus blades wasn't because of the style. It wasn't because they made the scimitar, because they made, it didn't matter what it was made of. It was like Sheffield steel. They found a particular vein of ore which was high quality in iron and carbon, which is rare because steel and carbon are rarely found together.
That was eventually. At first,
Yes.
it was they had the different types of metal that they just melted together.
Yeah.
Then they figured out, hey, we can do that.
But when Damascus steel was first made, they did not know what they were making. All they knew is that this particular vein of ore was making better blades than anything else. But eventually they ran out.
I think that was actually in Damascus, but the Vikings made Damascus on accident.
Yes.
So in Damascus, yes, I agree.
They didn't know what they were doing at first, but then it was actually a French alchemist in exile from Rome that figured out how to separate the separate metals so they could identify them both by quantity and quality. That because don't forget, when the Vikings were making different steels, not all of them turned out Damascus, the blue-gray Damascus.
No, they actually made a few that were good and went, okay.
Yeah. Most turned out normal gray, but Damascus steel stood out. You could tell you could tell.
Now, one of the things where you get really the best Damascus is in Spain, because in Spain, a little bit, I'm going to go with east and north, there are copper, iron, and tin veins.
Yeah, which also have a little bit of manganese in them, which is what made Damascus. It was the little bits of impurities, and it was the right impurities.
I think that's why they made such good Damascus.
Yes, because Damascus steel doesn't look like ordinary metal. It is actually a blue. It's actually got a bluish tinge.
Oh, I've got several Damascus blades.
Yeah, and on the edge, it's got high reflectivity, so it actually looks white on its thinnest edge.
And it works like a serrated blade.
Yeah, it doesn't catch when it cuts.
Well, because you got the hard steel, soft steel, hard steel, soft steel. It works like
it creates rolls. You get rolls instead of flat. Yeah. Damascus has rolls instead of flat, and that occurs naturally because you've got the different metals. But if you look at Damascus blade, it's blue, and then you've got you can look closer, you actually see the rolls on the exposed edge.
So I'm going to say this, David. Yep. This was a really weird conversation we've had. I loved it.
The point. That's the point of this.
I loved it.
A conversation. Very good. And I'll try to get others on to have conversations with eventually, but I don't want to waste conversations by churning them out. I want
Make sure when you're doing them they're good. And I can send you some people. I've got a few friends that are really good authors. So
very good. I'll just do the outro now and thank everybody for coming and remind them to like, share, and subscribe, because apparently people don't unless you tell them to. It's really weird. And of course,
thank you for showing up.
And thank you for showing up. Yeah. And I'd really like you to support the channel, because I'm on disability, so I earn less than minimum wage. This is like,
I am too, buddy.
yeah, a lot of people are. And thank you everybody for coming. Absolutely. Bye
You
now.
have a good day, man. Thank you for having me back.